Welcome to the Smart Divorce on Divorce Source Radio, saving you time, money, and your sanity as you build a better life post-divorce. I'm Deborah Moskovich, divorce consultant, educator, and author of The Smart Divorce. And along with my co-host Steve Peck, we'll not only bring you the leading divorce experts across North America, but individuals who have been touched by divorce and use their experience to help others through divorce as well, providing insights, tips, and strategies for managing divorce during the process and afterwards. Strategies and advice for building your post-divorce happiness, and of course, if you've got children, what it means for them as well. Hey, Steve, we've got a very interesting show today. You know, I've given workshops on the Smart Divorce, and a couple of times, much to my surprise, people have approached me afterwards and talked about the reasons why their relationship has fallen apart. And one of the participants confided that her husband was leaving her because he declared he was gay. She thought that she was the only person that this has ever happened to. And much to her surprise, I had mentioned to her that I've had other clients in my practice, consulting practice, tell me that the same thing has happened to them. I had another woman whose husband declared he was gay, and I also had a man whose wife also declared that she was a lesbian. So it's not as uncommon as you might think. As a matter of fact, after I wrote an article for More magazine about this very subject, and after doing some research, I found that 2 million lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered individuals, or LGBT, in the U.S., they've married someone of the opposite sex. So it's very interesting how people are doing, you know, they're marrying someone of the opposite sex when they are interested, perhaps in a relationship with someone of the same sex. But the interesting thing is they're not doing it to stay in the closet or to hide. They really do love that person. And so in terms of a healing process, our guest Amity Buxton is going to help understand that, because people would ask a question like, how could you not know?
Right.
You know what? Sometimes
how could
there
you?
were no
I mean, there's no signs that they pick up on?
It's a good question. I interviewed a few different people for this article on More magazine. You could access it at more.ca, and we'll have it on our site. But from the individuals I spoke with, one of them said to me, I suspected something because our love life wasn't all that great. But a couple of other individuals said we had like a fabulous love life. Like there was passion and intimacy, and we were best friends. So no, there aren't always signs.
No, there's a lot of couples that their love life isn't so great, right?
That's right. So you never really know what goes on. But interestingly enough, in Canada, same-sex marriage is legal. So I figured if same-sex marriage is legal, then there's a chance that there's going to be divorce as well. So I really wanted to understand if within the LGBT relationship, when there is a separation of that relationship, if it's any different than a heterosexual relationship. So I went to the LGBT church here in Toronto to try to understand what happens when you come out. And I also spoke with Martha McCarthy. She was counsel for a case that really gained widespread amendments to include the same-sex couples as spouses in both the federal and provincial legislation. And I learned some very important points, which I think will help listeners understand what individuals are going through. Number one, when you think about it, people don't choose to be gay. You know, they don't choose to be a lesbian. And I think that there's this misconception that it's a choice. It's not, because why would someone choose to be different and to make their life more difficult, right? Like, you know,
so then the question is, if they know they're gay, then why would they get married to a woman?
Well, there are definitely individuals, and I understand this from my research, that want to really live the life that society says that they should have with the 2.3 kids and the white picket fence, and they want to live that dream. Like they really do want to have that dream.
So they're repressing themselves.
Maybe. But when they do come out, it's not an easy thing. It's a process. It's like anything else, like divorce, it's a process. And it isn't easy. Like when you're growing up in a heterosexual household, you've got a mother and a father. What do you see? Like your role models at home are, pictures of always a male and a female couple. Like that's what's around you. An individual who is gay or lesbian, that's what they're seeing. That's their modeling. Now, I think today we're a little bit more progressive, so they are seeing role models that define who they are. They do see same-sex couples. They see same-sex couples being able to have children together, and or being able to adopt. So I think that it's easier to come out and it's more accepted. But it's a difficult situation, and that's why I'm thrilled to have our guest today, Amity Buxton, who is going to tell us really what goes on and how to heal from that, because it's not an easy process.
Well, it's got to be hard for the spouse that didn't know that their spouse was gay, and now if they have children, that just adds a whole new ball game to this mix.
Well, if you've got children, I think that, and that's what Amity will talk about in terms of how children at different ages react to understanding, react to learning upon this disclosure that their parent is gay. I think that that's really important. And also, in terms of your world, like your world reality has changed now, like what's true, what's real. And with Amity, we're going to discuss that. Amity Buxton is a PhD. She's the founder of the Straight Spouse Network and author of The Other Side of the Closet, The Coming Out Crisis for Straight Spouses and Families. And she says, which is really interesting, that a spouse coming out within a marriage is not an individual event. And that's true, because it does impact everyone in the family. Amity founded SSN, Straight Spouse Network, in 1991 after her husband disclosed that he was gay. She has since become the foremost authority on the post-disclosure experience on straight spouses and lectures internationally about the grieving and coping process people need to help develop in order to heal and move on.
Interesting. Amity, welcome to The Smart Divorce on Divorce Source Radio.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Amity, when we last spoke, you mentioned that the straight husband or wife and their children go through their own struggle to understand and accept the revealed information from their perspective. Mm-hmm. I think it's important for people to understand that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. It's not like the ordinary divorce. The thing that happens and that causes the divorce is that suddenly you discover your husband or wife has a whole different sexual orientation. So that shatters all your assumptions about men, about women, about marriage, about the future. And so that is a whole different set of problems to resolve. But secondly, the big news is that the husband or wife came out. So the straight spouse is ignored.
So, Amity, you speak from experience on this?
Yes, I did. I was married for 25 years before I found out my husband was gay. But we had separated because he gradually became like a stone wall, and I said I can't live with a stone wall. And he said, "Oh, well, the husband always moves out. I'll move out." Then I found out.
How did he? Oh, so that's how he disclosed to you that he was gay.
No, I had to wait another year or so before. He was recovering from surgery, and he was under medications, and he said, "Oh, I have something to tell you. Oh. I had a gay lover before we got married, and I jilted him to marry you."
Wow, you must have been blown away.
Well, I was blown away, but I burst out laughing and said, "Oh, my goodness, this is like a soap opera." No. But it wasn't. It was worse than that. So, yes, I had to sort of, all my assumptions, all my belief systems were shattered, so the good side is you have to reconfigure your philosophy.
So
the bad side is that you're kind of living in an unreal world for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, but you were married for 25 years. I'm sure that you heard people say to you, and I'm sure it was also very hurtful. How could you not know? Like, how did you not have any idea?
Yeah, that's part of the straight spouse problem. You get blamed. How come you didn't know? Well, why would you think your husband's gay if he asked you to marry you? Why would you think your wife is lesbian if she agreed to get married? It would never. Sure, looking back, you could see all the signs, but at the time, those things happen in marriage.
Why do you think that a man or a woman would marry someone of the opposite sex if they felt that they were attracted to the same sex?
Because of their growing up in a conservative pocket or a traditional faith community in which being gay is damnable and evil or sick, and you're expected to get married. And you may be thinking, Well, that's different now these days that there is gay marriage in Canada and in some places in America, United States. But, we're still getting 3 or 4 calls a day from people, young people, as well as old, to whom it's happening.
There's a stigma attached to a man leaving a woman for another woman. Mm-hmm. What is the stigma, if there is one, when the man leaves for another man?
There's no stigma for the husband who leaves for another man or the wife who leaves for another woman. The stigma's on the straight spouse. How come you didn't know? And why can't you get over it in a hurry?
That's interesting.
Now, why would? Yeah, because you loved this person and your world was shattered, so you can't expect the emotions to just go away.
Exactly, and you continue to love this person, even though you're hurt, you're angry. The major emotions are anger and fear and grief and the pain of having the rug pulled out completely from you.
Right. Can you tell us about the 6 stages of recovery? I remember hearing you speak about it at the conference, and we talked about that at More Magazine.
Yeah, sure. Well, the first is this shock and denial. It can't be true. And a little bit of relief, because now you know what the problems were that you sensed might be there. I mean, you just knew there was a problem, but you didn't know what it was. Then the next stage is having the courage, facing the reality. Okay, this is it. Facing it, acknowledging it, and accepting it. Then the next stage, once you've accepted this is the reality, he really is gay or she really is lesbian, and I can't change that, and I can't reattract him because I'm the wrong gender, have the wrong equipment, then you can start healing. And the healing involves this, what I mentioned before, the shattering of assumptions, your belief system, your emotions, even your physical sense, because a lot of people get suicidal or they start drinking too much or smoking too much. And then after healing, it's a matter of reconfiguring, not rebuilding, because you can't rebuild because all the pieces don't fit anymore, but reconfiguring your own identity and your own integrity and your own belief system. And then the last stage is transforming your life according to your new belief system.
And okay, can you explain that a little bit more? Like, what do you mean by your new belief system? Because I would think that just your sexuality now is in question. Like,
well, those are the issues. The issues are your sexuality, the marriage, the kids, your own identity. Who am I and what's my sexual orientation?
Really?
Your integrity, because your moral compass is shattered. You can't tell right from wrong or truth from falsehoods anymore. Oh. And your belief system. And by belief system, I mean whatever philosophy of life you have that gives meaning and purpose to your life and direction.
I find it odd that you find yourself questioning your identity in this situation.
Well, you think, if I wasn't a woman enough to keep him attracted, something's wrong with me sexually.
Oh.
I wasn't man enough to have her stay in my bed. Something's wrong with me sexually.
And
I'm sorry, Deb. Go ahead.
Well, and I would think that, like, in terms of the sexuality, and I have spoken with other individuals whose partners have left them, that they had a passionate marriage, that they had a fabulous marriage. There was a lot of intimacy, and all of a sudden, the husband discloses after many years that he's gay.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these relationships start with this very close best friend, sharing of interests and so forth. That is a very intimate thing, and it is kind of fun and it is exciting, and it can work for a while, and then something may happen. Maybe the man will meet somebody at work, or the woman will meet somebody in her kids' playgroup or something. And so it just triggers, or a life crisis. Sometimes at the mother-in-law's birthday, or somebody's turning 50, there's some life moment that makes them sort of say, well, come on now, who am I really?
Right.
It's
what about
strange. Go ahead.
What about the children? I would think that children at different ages would react differently to this disclosure.
You're right. The little ones before school, they just want a mommy and a daddy and a safe house. And then the school-age kids, they too want to have a safe place, but they're beginning to hear gay slurs on the playground, maybe, or they may or not, and so it's a little dicey for them. But the real problem is if they're adolescent, because they're going through their own sexual blossoming, so they can identify with either both parents in a way, and also it's during those teen years, as we've been reading lately, that gay kids get taunted the most and feel uncomfortable, so the kids feel stigmatized. Then by high school, a lot of them will figure it all out and realize it's still my mom and dad, even though he's gay and she's lesbian, and we want equality, and maybe they'll join some gay-straight alliance if they're high school. And if they're adult kids, when their parents come out, they have their own value systems, and they may be pretty judgmental about one or the other of them.
Do you sense embarrassment?
Oh, of course. It depends on whether it's a conservative community or a school population or not. Yeah, embarrassed. They feel stigmatized.
Mm-hmm. What was your feeling towards gay relationships prior to all of this coming out?
I never gave it a thought.
It wasn't your reality, I guess it wasn't your reality.
It wasn't, it wasn't in my scope of experience. Now, interestingly enough, the person that gave me the most help was the person that happened to have been my husband's lover, but was head of gay fathers in San Francisco. And he had me come talk to the gay fathers and talk with some other straight spouses. And all we did was tell them our stories. The 50 men in the room stood up, tears rolling down their faces, gave us a standing ovation, and explained, our wife said something like this, but we couldn't listen to our wives, but we listened to you. And, oh, my. And as a result, a lot of them were able to mend fences with their wives.
Interesting. You've been doing an incredible amount of research over the last 24 years. Can you share with us some of the learning that might be insightful for our listeners?
Well, I think the main thing is that if straight spouses are listening, the way that they can get through best is to find another straight spouse. Peer support has proved to be the most effective. Not counseling, because most most counselors are unfamiliar with this, and so they don't realize the straight spouse's emotions and stages and concerns and issues. If there are other people out there who know someone who's a straight spouse, just validate their feelings. Don't tell them what to do or how the marriage will turn out. Mm-hmm. Couples who want to stay together, it takes time. Peer support and models of couples who have made it work, and honesty and open communication, and then no defensiveness. Just listening to each other as openly as possible, and a lot of the regular things you need in rebuilding any kind of relationship, and which is resilience and empathy and mutual respect and that sort of thing. But the interesting thing that I found was the couples who tried to stay, about a third of the couples tried to stay together, and about half of them after 3 years are still together. But those who aren't probably have a deeper bond than most of heterosexual couples because they've worked through these tremendous issues together.
Good point. And the ones that stay together, do they stay together in an altered state?
Some stay together monogamous, some celibate, some in what they call closed loop, where the husband will have another husband as his partner, and both wives know, but the marriage relationship is secondary to the closed loop relationship.
Does that also go on in a lesbian?
I haven't heard of it too much, but there are some have a threesome, not that too many. Some have an open marriage, so that either can do either, but they're the core. And then I guess some are polyamorous, but not too many.
Right. Now, would they stay in that relationship for the sake of the children?
That's so interesting. The studies I did of couples where the wife came out as lesbian or bisexual, they stayed together not for the children, but for the sense of family. It was very striking compared to the one where the husbands came out. But very few of them in my studies say that they stay for finances or the kids, per se. They stay because of the relationship between the two of them, their love, their friendship, their history.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
I know.
Now, I'm sure in terms of the individuals, the couple, they have to work it out themselves, and there's those feelings that you have to, the grieving process and everything that you have to work through. But what about the extended family? What's the reaction to the disclosure by the extended family? Is there some kind of pattern?
The pattern I found out was that their reactions, which are many times negative, are probably the biggest obstacle that the couples who try to stay together have to overcome. Either their parents don't understand, or you have to have a monogamous relationship, or they're against the gay thing, or they keep accusing the straight spouse of over-compromising, and they just don't understand the notion of mutual compromise.
Right. Do you think the tides are shifting now that disclosure is becoming a little bit more acceptable as gay marriage is legal in Canada and in some states in the U.S., that the stigma is less so? So are more individuals coming out, or I don't know. What do you think?
As I mentioned earlier, we're still getting the same number of calls. Well, maybe slightly less, but 3 or 4. And some are young, just pregnant. Most are older. Older.
It's interesting. Go ahead.
Well, one of my pitches is, which is so wonderful that you've got this program, is that if the public could pay attention to the trauma that the straight spouse goes through, they more than may realize that when they do these anti-gay speeches or actions, they're hurting more than the gay people. They're hurting straight people and kids.
You've mentioned trauma a couple of times. Tell me more about the trauma.
Okay, well, I'll make two examples. One is a woman who, after her husband came out, stayed curled up in a fetal position in her bed eating chocolates for 3 days. There are people who want to commit suicide. What happens, Steve, is that their whole world, as they knew it, has been blown up. Mm-hmm. There is nothing. Their whole life has been with their husband. Their marriage has been a lie. Nothing. This is how they feel. Nothing that they have done was real.
But Deb,
Deb,
isn't that what we see sometimes with a traditional marriage?
Absolutely. I did a lot of research in terms of trying to understand the dynamics of gay and lesbian relationships versus heterosexual relationships, and what are the emotions, and do the emotions change? And, what I found was, I did speak to a deacon at an LGBT church, and what she shared with me was it's the role models that individuals grow up with. Mm-hmm. And the role models for many is a heterosexual relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So when they themselves get into a heterosexual relationship, it's not that they're trying to hurt anybody, but they want to fit in, right? So I think
absolutely no. It's not deliberate.
No.
It's not deliberate. And they try their best.
And I think that that's a very strong message that our listeners have to take away, is that if they find themselves in this situation, it's not that their spouse deliberately went out to deceive them. They really wanted this lifestyle. Oh,
absolutely. They did their best. I remember my husband saying to me, I did everything that I was told was right to do, and I'm still not happy. But that's big leap for a straight spouse to have to go beyond their hurt from the behavior to realize it wasn't necessarily deliberate.
And how do you see the person that's coming out? How do you see their hurt and their trauma?
Oh, well, this is why I do the work that I do, is choosing to live a life that isn't their own out of guilt or shame is an awful thing to have to do. And then to realize they don't want to hurt their wives or husbands when they come out, which is why they take so long. And secrets are so lethal anyway. No, they suffer. And this is one of the reasons I do the work that I do, to make the society realize not only how much they have hurt the gay and lesbian people, but if those people get married, the ones they're married to and their kids.
Right.
No. It's when I saw what my husband went through, I wouldn't want anyone to have to go through that.
No, in a sense,
I took him to every doctor I could think of because he was so unhappy and so distressed and so physically hurt.
Yeah, in a sense, I would think it's a little bit more difficult to communicate that disclosure because your life is going to change so dramatically.
Oh, you mean the straight spouse speaking out?
No, the gay or lesbian spouse speaking out.
Well, yeah. It's hard, except they do have a community waiting for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they stay married, that community's not supportive.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
Yeah, think about that, Deborah. I mean, the gay community is very supportive.
That's right.
But yet, you go to your mother-in-law and father-in-law and their friends, and they're not going to be so supportive.
Oh, no, that's not what I meant. I meant the gay community is supportive of somebody coming out, but get out of the marriage. Don't stay married.
Right, and they're not
supportive. The gay community doesn't like that.
Because you're not being
true yourself.
Right. Now, one of the things that you mentioned to me, which
although
I thought...
what you said, Steve, was right.
Okay.
Sorry. It just didn't apply to what I was saying.
Well, I get that way sometimes. I miss things.
Oh, we all do.
That's why Deborah's here.
Well, no, I think we've all made some excellent points, and Amity, you've been very helpful in enlightening us. I think that you told me something very interesting that our listeners should know, and that to expect the journey to take 3 to 6 years to heal through the process.
Yeah. And that's because of the depth of the shock, because it strikes your picture of yourself as a sexual being.
Yeah.
And your capability of being a good spouse.
Mm-hmm.
You followed all the rules. It didn't work. And the fact that you can't change it. You know, if it was been a husband, you might want to lose weight, change your wardrobe, color your hair differently, reattract them. You can't.
Right. What about for the children? Is there like a grieving or healing process that they need to go through? Like here for the spouse, it takes 3 to 6 years. What about for the child?
Depends on the age. The little ones, you know, I usually suggest just tell the kids you both love them and they're going to be safe and you're still your parents. And the little ones, they can work it out. The teenagers and the middle school kids, because they're themselves hearing this and that about gays and lesbians, it takes them a little longer.
Well, let me ask you this question. If you have a spouse that's coming out and you've got children, is there a part of you that then starts to be concerned about whether or not the children could end up being gay or lesbian?
Yeah. And that's all part of that stage of facing the reality and acknowledging and accepting it and knowing as much as you find. And part of that stage is educating yourself and realizing that, yes, maybe there may be more possibilities that a kid's going to turn out gay or lesbian, but he's your kid. You don't want this person to go through what the gay person did.
Right.
And you accept it. But that's down the line after you go through thinking all the gays in the world are terrible, and then you realize what they've had to go through, and that yes, you have your own problems, but you end up more concerned that the kids are happy and that they choose the life that matches who they are.
Right. I guess these parents now are more liberal in their thinking and more accepting.
Some, I would say the majority, but some stay still angry and anti-gay and trying to change them and that sort of thing. But they're a very small minority. And particularly if you can find the straight spouse network, or at least another spouse, you've got peers who can validate your feelings and help. And once you get your feelings validated, you know this from your divorce work. Once you can get your own feelings validated, you can breathe a sigh of relief and look more objectively at your partner.
Right. So if any of our listeners want to reach out to the Straight Spouse Network, how do they contact you? What's your website?
I think the website's very easy, just www.straightspouse.org.
That's great.
And there's a great little group and contact in Toronto who can talk to any of the Canadian spouses by phone or email, which you can get through the network.
Wonderful.
We talked a second ago about concern towards your children becoming gay. Is there any research that shows that kids have a greater chance of being gay if a parent is gay?
There was some by Golenbach and Tasker there in England, a study, and it was more that more than maybe turned out to be bisexual, but more importantly, they were unafraid to try a same-sex relationship when they were in their teens and sort out who they were, and there were slightly more.
It seems like that's more popular these days, that younger kids are doing this.
Exactly. Well, there was that whole period of lesbian until graduation. That was a period about 20 years ago in American colleges, lesbian until you graduate.
Wasn't that called Vicarious?
I don't know. But there has been a study, I forget who did it, I think it was Bailey, of siblings. And there was a greater chance that identical twins would both be gay than there was of fraternal twins, than there was of siblings. So there is a genetic component. But, it all depends on how it interacts with your environment. You can't predict.
Wow, this is so interesting. Amity, thank you so much for speaking with us and sharing your personal experience and your research. I'm sure it's going to be helpful for a lot of many, many people. And also, even if your spouse is straight, if you know of anyone whose spouse has come out, just the support that you need to provide to your friend, I think is so important.
Yeah, and just listen.
Thank you so much, Amity.
I found that interview absolutely fascinating, Deborah. And, she's mentioning the trauma on the straight spouse's side, and then we talked about more trauma on the gay or lesbian spouse's side. And what really touched me was when she got into all of the questions that she finds herself asking. Am I attractive enough? Is there a way I could fix my hair? And I just felt really bad about that.
Yes, because, you hear of many heterosexual relationships where one partner would say, if you lost some weight, that would make the relationship better. If you did this, that would make the relationship better. If you communicated. But here, there's no control. There's nothing that's going to make that relationship better. You might have had a great relationship, but it's a sexual orientation that is not going to work in that relationship any longer.
You reach a point when you're in your late 40s or 50s and you go, you know what? Life is short. I want some more happiness. I want to be me.
Absolutely. And so then the question is, why didn't you tell me that when we first started dating, that you wanted to be you? But I don't think that they really knew what they wanted. Right.
And being you is not that easy. Coming out of the closet, we know, is very hard. And 22 years ago, it was harder than even now.
That's right. And from my research, I found a number of things, because I think I mentioned earlier that, I spoke to a deacon at an LGBT church, and I spoke to this lawyer because I wanted to understand, even though gay and lesbian marriage is legal in Canada, and that must mean that there's going to be divorce, right? So, but I did find that the issues are the same, the emotions are the same, but when a spouse comes out in a heterosexual marriage, there are different dynamics, right? And that's what I think was so helpful to have Amity explain were those dynamics, because I think that people need to be more understanding. I don't know why people are so cruel sometimes and say, just get over it. You know, it was out of your control. Like, how can you get over something like as traumatic? And I also found what was interesting is that Amity talked about the trauma. And usually in divorce, we really try to stay away from talking about a trauma or a crisis. We talk about divorce as a process, whereas your spouse coming out is more traumatic.
No, I would say so. And you know, people are just mean sometimes. And you take a look at some of these quote-unquote church-going folk.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they can be some of the most judgmental people. Not trying to offend anyone here, but you know what I'm saying. That so that they're not looking at this relationship with anything but disdain and anger, maybe towards the person that came out and did this to their son or daughter.
That's right. They bring their own belief system into it. What you really need to do is be supportive of the individual that's experiencing it, and you know, be open-minded and accepting. And I guess that's society, is not always all that accepting.
I thought it was interesting that she said that when the couples break apart, whether they're gay or lesbian, after they've come out, that if they work together, they end up with a stronger relationship than before in many cases.
I know, wasn't that interesting? Like, because in many heterosexual relationships, especially when there was conflict, and in this situation there is conflict, there's disappointment, and it was huge. But a high conflict relationship and a heterosexual relationship doesn't usually end up becoming better friends, right? But here you...
Yeah, right. That's for sure. It's an understatement.
So there you have it. We've got a lot of interesting and informative topics to explore. Telling your children about divorce, working with a lawyer, a stumbling block for reaching settlement, managing stress and your physical health. Oh, we've got way more inspirational stories coming up too. Like I thought that Amity was incredibly inspirational. And the talk that we had the other day with Jill Ajeezy was another inspirational. And that's what we're going to do, listeners, is bring more inspirational speakers to you. As I think about how I rebuilt my life, there are a lot of areas I learned about: developing my own identity from we to me, defining my living space and making it mine, happiness, relationships, not repeating the same patterns. You know, the list is endless. And that's what I promised listeners, that if there's something that you would like to be enlightened about, we were going to be provocative, educational, and interesting, but this show's for you. So tell us what you want to hear. Because after all, I think... Don't you, Steve? An informed listener is a smart listener?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We want them involved.
That's right. So to get involved, email info@thesmartdivorce.com or divorcesourceradio@gmail.com.
Or leave us a voicemail on our listener line, area code 248-686-2256. You call, you just leave your question on voicemail, and we may air it on The Smart Divorce.
You've been listening to The Smart Divorce on Divorce Source Radio.